Maybe you've had some dreams of having some Tuscan-style leisurely lunches underneath some grapevines, and you're wondering, should I grow grapes this year? Well, the purpose of today's video is I thought we would discuss with one another some of the pros and cons of growing grapes, and that way you can decide if you should grow grapes this year. Welcome to True Freedom Permaculture, where I show you all the tips and tricks you need to have a green thumb, even if you weren't born with one. The first thing I would consider is how long you're going to be living where you are currently. So if you are a renter and you don't know the situation of whether or not you'll be able to stay long term, or if you're owning your home but you don't know, how much longer you're going to be there, there's a chance you might move in a couple of years, then I would advise against growing grapes, because they do take a couple to a few years to establish and to really see the fruit of your labor. So if you're not going to be somewhere that you're going to be for, I would say at least like 5 to 7 years or so, then you might want to skip grapes for now. The next thing I would consider is your climate. So grapes, and we're talking about table grapes today, so grapes made for fresh eating, because that's what I have experience with and that's what I grow. But they generally prefer somewhat moderate climates, and there is a difference. So European grapes, those varieties, tend to prefer the warmer climates, and I grow American varieties, and those tend to be more resistant to the cold seasons. They're more cold hardy. So for example, at my home, I grow 2 different types of grapes. I grow Concord grapes, which most people are familiar with, and a variety called Reliance grapes. And Reliance grapes are a hybrid. They are more like reddish skinned in color. They're not as dark as the Concord grapes, but they are another form of red grape. And so Concord grapes, they say, are best in zones 4 through 9. And Reliance and their seedless grapes tend to grow best in zones 5 through 8. So that kind of gives you an idea. Look up your growing zone. Make sure that whatever grape you're selecting will thrive in your climate. The other thing you need to grow grapes is a lot of sun. Grapes do require full sun. When you think about grapevines, you see them in, like Provence or Tuscany, things like that. And, they're just out and they're not growing in dark gray conditions. So you want to make sure that you at least have a climate or a microclimate that allows for ample sunlight. So my grapes grow in the back of my garden, and they grow up columns, and that way they get full sun exposure because it's facing the south, because I live in North America. As far as maintenance goes, I would say grapes are generally pretty low maintenance. I do add compost to the soil. I want to make sure that the soil that they're growing in is healthy, but they can thrive in poor soils, and they're pretty hardy, and they don't require a lot of maintenance throughout the year. Now, that being said, they do require pruning in order to produce the optimal amount of fruit and quality of fruit. So I do prune them once in the summer and once in the winter. I have videos on that. If you want to learn more about that, I'll post them in the link below. But so you do have to do that. But otherwise, I don't know. I just think that for what you get, you really don't have to put in like daily work into them. So I do think that they are worthwhile. And the good news is when you do your summer pruning, you can get grape leaves. So if you like stuffed grape leaves, and I don't know many people who don't, they are a wonderful treat, and it's another way of using the entire grapevine. So I like that it's not just for the fruit, you can eat the leaves too, and I get quite a bit of leaves. Grapes really are one of my most favorite things to grow, and if you grow it up an arbor like I do, you really can't beat that canopy of shade in the summer months when the grapes are really filling out. It's so nice to have that patch, and it's a perfect place to read a book, have some coffee or a glass of wine or some tea, or just hang out for a little while. And it really kind of makes the area magical, I think. Also, the leaves can be used. Now, they say that the leaves can be used medicinally, that they have a lot of tannins in them. So tannins, as we know, tannins are also found in the fruit too. So hence, winemaking and such. But the tannins tend to have an astringent quality. So they are said to, when something has an astringent quality, it's said to tighten up the tissues, to constrict the tissues. So they're good for anything like if you have a wound, for example, people use them as bandages to cover up wounds. So that is a way that you could use the leaves medicinally, just an example. I'll never forget the time I tried a grape that wasn't from the supermarket. It was a Concord grape at a farmer's market here when I moved to the East Coast. And it was truly life-changing. It's quite a different flavor. It's much more intense, and it was really magical and something that I never forgot. And that's why I knew I wanted to grow them myself someday. Also, they say that grapes are one of the most heavily sprayed crops. And if there's a lot of pesticides on them, it's not like something like an avocado or a banana where you remove the skin and you don't eat it. You consume the whole thing. So if you can grow your own, I think that's better, because then there's going to be less residual pesticides on it. You know exactly what's going on there if you put anything on there. So that's another good reason to grow your own. Let's talk about some of the health properties of grapes. So they're really high in fiber, especially, for example, I'll go back to the Concord grape because it has the seeds. If you eat the seeds along with the skin too, they do provide a lot of fiber into your diet. And also they say that grapes are really good for cardiovascular health in particular. So great for your heart because they help to dilate the arteries. And there's something called resveratrol in the grape, and it's a plant-based compound. I'm sure most of you have heard about it. It really gained a lot of popularity, maybe, I don't know, like early 2000s. I feel like you heard that bounced around a lot. And again, this is something that I did do some research into. I think I could look into it more. It seemed like the studies that were coming from the resveratrol studies when it got all the hype was that they isolated the compound and they gave it to rodents in a lab. And whenever they isolate the compound, it's obviously not the same thing as consuming the whole fruit itself. So there came into question some things about how much you would need to actually consume of the fruit in order to see the benefits. People were saying that it's just really, really high quantities in order to get any major health benefits from that. And also they discovered that the resveratrol exists not only in red wine, because a lot of people were just using it as an excuse to run with it and drink a lot of red wine, but you can find it in grape juice and also the fruit itself, as long as they were red grapes. And so, you know, like I said, studies are mixed. I do like looking at the science, but I also think that there's something to be said for just eating a varied diet with the least amount of pesticides and additives as possible. Eat a whole range of fruit. Eat fruit when it's in season. Eat what's growing local to you, and I think you'll be pretty good off. Now, that all being said, resveratrol is said to reverse some of the effects of aging, and it's supposed to have anti-cancer properties as well. Another thing I've witnessed and experienced over the years is that the grapevines attract a lot of birds and bees and wasps too. So if you're looking to attract those into your garden, this can work with you. However, there can also be too much of a good thing. So consider that as well when you're planting them close to your home. Also, I've had enough fruit that there's been enough for it to go around, and I haven't had to do anything in the way of pest management as far as, like, you know, I've seen people put like bags over the bunches of grapes. I haven't had to do that, but you might have to do that if it becomes a problem. So that's just something else you'll want to think about too. I'm hoping that you feel more informed about growing grapes, so you have all the information in front of you so you can make an educated decision as to whether or not you should grow grapes this year. If you do decide to grow them, you'll probably be shipped a bare root vine. So it's going to look like just a couple of sticks basically where it goes above the ground, and then below the ground it's going to have this already formed root system. And so you'll plant it. It won't look very impressive at first, but I promise that if you have some patience, give it a few years and some care and some maintenance, it will pay off, and you'll have a beautiful perennial plant that will bear you lots of fruit and leaves to use in your garden, and it's something that you can enjoy throughout the year. So if you're looking to find out more about another perennial plant that where patience pays off. It takes a few years to establish. Another crop you can consider is asparagus. And again, if you know that you're going to be staying put for a while in the place where you're living, I do think that it's a crop that really pays off. So if you'd like to learn more about asparagus, feel free to click on the video coming up here and I will meet you over there. I'll see you soon.